So I wake up today, I go on the websites, Drudge Report says Bogdanovich, movies partly to blame, and I say, they must have interviewed him in jail. See, I confused the director Bogdanovich with the ex-governor Blagojevich. I couldn't understand why they would care what Blagojevich had to say about the massacre, but then I figured, look, he's in prison, maybe he knows something that we don't know. But as I read it, I realized it was one of my favorite directors, Peter Bogdanovich, who many of you, may or may not know. He's a legendary director. He's really pretty good. You may know him. He plays a psychiatrist. He played a psychiatrist in The Sopranos. He played Dr. Melfi's psychiatrist. That's Peter Bogdanovich, if you watch The Sopranos. Nevertheless, he says, what if movies are part of the problem? And that leads us to today's discussion, which is the slaughter in the movie theater. Now, I immediately blamed Warner Brothers, the actors, the violence in the movies. No one paid attention to it because I'm only Michael Savage. I'm not a legendary film director. My audience is small. It's only 8 to 10 million a week. And I only have 6 bestsellers in a row after writing 26 books. But why listen to me? Listen to an actor. Listen to Mr. Beale, who goes to a hospital for furtherance of his violent behavior in the movies. Or why don't you listen to Sean Penn, who postures around the world as an anti-violence individual, and yet his entire career has been built upon hatred and violence. One of the finest editorials on this slaughter, by the way, and blaming the right people, was written by Charles Hurt and appeared in the Washington Times, and I put it up on michaelsavage.com, Hollywood's Legacy. First, I thought, when I read it, Charles Hurt, I thought, an actor, William Hurt. See, I don't know what it is. I mixed it up. I thought Hurt meant William Hurt, the actor, but it isn't. It's Charles Hurt. And Hurt says, an open letter to Christopher Nolan, Sean Penn, and Warner Brothers. He says, it's also perfectly fitting. I got to close the ad now. It's also perfectly fitting that in the wake of a murderous rampage in which 70 people are shot, 12 fatally, including a 6-year-old girl, and countless families are sacked with unspeakable grief, you would take the time to share with us your feelings. Because really at this moment, all that matters to most of us is what a bunch of smutty purveyors of violent fantasy, half-right actors, and an industry of sick narcissism is feeling at this moment. Keep going, Hurt. Director, and he goes on, Director Nolan, speaking on behalf of the cast and crew of The Dark Knight Rises, says, you told us how much you love going to the movies and how they're one of the great American art forms. And he goes on with his nonsense, and he says, and in the selfless modesty that is the hallmark of an Academy Award ceremony, you tell us that your feelings about the massacre are so deeply profound that the mere words of the English language, built up over hundreds of years, are simply not up to the task of describing them. Wow, you do have a gift for fantasy. But the real clue is that you remain shrouded in guilt-free delusions is when you mention the senseless tragedy that has befallen the entire Aurora community. Senseless? Really? If by senseless you mean carried out almost precisely from the scripts of your own movies, then sure it was senseless. As for you, Sean Pencilhead, you paragon of endless moralizing, Sean Pencilhead, we would like to thank you, Sean, for underwriting last week's ultraviolence and real-life carnage at the movie theater. One of the last scenes that 6-year-old saw in her precious life was a trailer for your despicable movie. In a final clip of a trailer filled with orgiastic bloodshed, you have some classy actors with machine guns unload from behind a movie screen into a crowd seated in a theater watching a film. Ring a bell, Sean? Sound familiar? Now, maybe you read this, maybe you didn't, maybe you want to move on. I don't want to move on because I am the only person. I'm going to have to say this again. On Friday, I came out and said that they should ban body armor for civilians, and they should ban, what do you call them, those round, I'm a little lost on the terminology right now, the barrel magazine, or whatever you want to call it. And my point was completely missed by almost everybody in the media. I'm a gun owner. I was on the rifle team in high school. I absolutely would defend the Second Amendment. But let me tell you something. There's a huge difference between the right to bear arms and the right to carry around a weapon that can shoot 100 bullets at police who are outgunned as it is. No, I'm sorry. Drum magazines have to be banned. Body armor has to be banned. You don't need body armor to go hunting. you don't need drum magazines to hunt a deer. What do you need drum magazines to go hunt a deer for? Can anyone explain it to me? Now, a man who I listen to the guy. He's not a bad guy, Bill Kristol from the Weekly Standard. He's a bright enough guy. He does a nice job in his magazine. He gets it somewhat right in clip 22. Let's hear Bill Kristol.
People have a right to handguns and hunting rifles. I don't think we have a right to semi-automatic quasi-machine guns that can shoot 100 bullets at a time. And I actually think the Democrats are being foolish as they're being cowardly. I think there is more support for some moderate forms of gun control if they separate it clearly from a desire to take away everyone's handguns or hunting rifles.
All right, he's almost right, but he mixes up semi-automatic machine gun because those are rifles, Bill. What you should know, probably you're a typical New York City gunophobe. I would be the prevailing fear in most liberals, the reason they don't own guns, is because they're afraid, because they're schizophrenic, that they'll turn the gun on themselves or a family member. But those of us who have self-control and don't have such feelings are not afraid to have a gun in the house, or several. But having said that, the semi-automatic weapons that you're talking about are in fact rifles. They're not machine guns. You can put a clip in with 10 to 20 rounds, depending upon the state that you live in, I believe. I'm not sure what the laws are here and there. But to have a magazine that would carry 100 bullets is insanity. And I'm telling you that we conservatives, capital C, must take the high road and say we are in favor of banning body armor and drum magazines. And I'm telling you that for a reason. The reason is that unless we control what we ban, we're liable to see things happen that we don't want to happen because we have a communist in the White House who's capable of doing anything. So I'm going to ask you something on the Savage Nation today. If you think that we need drum magazines or body armor, I'm going to open the conversation up to you. I don't want to argue with you. I'd like you to explain to my audience why a civilian, not a member of the military, not a member of a police department, needs a drum magazine. Why do you need a drum magazine? To hunt a deer? You mean you need more than 2 bullets to kill a poor little deer? What do you need body armor for? Oh, I see. In case the deer charges you and those velvety antlers might pierce your hunting outfit? Give me a break. This is out of control. Now, there's a lot more that needs to be said. Warner Brothers, in my opinion, is culpable. The actors should be ashamed of themselves, frankly. You know, Christian Bale, whatever his name is a fairly good actor. I've enjoyed him in movies. But I thought his high-handed stunt of going to the hospital was a little sickening. He did it strictly for additional publicity. He didn't convince me that he really cared. Why should I care whether he cared about them being injured? Of course he cared. So what? All he did was push his name and get more publicity for himself in the movie, which I thought was disgusting. Frankly, I thought Christian Bale was using the injuries and deaths for his own advancement. That's how it looked to me. Given that the principal rule in all societies, and this rule, by the way, applies to every society on earth, whether it be socialist, communist, capitalist, anarchist, or AC/DC and foot power, the primary human rule is that everyone advances their own self-interest. Primarily, their own self-interest is what is advanced by everyone on earth. And that goes back to a precept written about 1,000 years ago by an ancient philosopher who said, if I am not for myself, who will be? If I'm only for myself, what am I? So, yeah, you have to care about yourself. If you only care about yourself, what are you? You're an animal. And unfortunately, most people have forgotten the second part of that. Yeah. In other words, you got it? So let's not get into the philosophy of it. Let's stick to this. Let's not argue about the Second Amendment. I won't take those calls. I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. So, Doug, don't give me those calls. I want to know why you think the average citizen who wants one should be able to buy full body armor. I want to know why you think the average citizen who wants one should be able to buy a drum magazine. Are we clear? This is the Savage Nation. This is not NPR. I'm a conservative. I'm a gun owner. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I gave $25,000 a few years ago to Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association. Never heard from him. I don't care very much for that organization, incidentally. I think it's another bureaucracy like all the others out for its own self-interest. I don't think they're my friend or your friend. I think they are their own friend. Nevertheless, they do some reasonable things. If you don't like what I'm saying, it's too bad. This is one man's opinion. I'll be right back.
Savage.
But I still stick by my supposition that we do not need body armor to hunt deer, and we do not need drum magazines to hunt rabbits. If you have a different opinion, I'll take your call. 1-800-449-8255. Again, I'm not arguing against the Second Amendment. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm a gun owner, been on the rifle team, have given a lot of money to the National Rifle Association. But enough is enough for this lunatic to be able to buy the guns. And by the way, did you see the news today? He sent a report to his psychiatrist days before this explaining what he was going to do and how he was going to kill. And it got lost in the mailroom of the university. How's that for the U.S. Postal Service and university? Look, I know that I'm going to be, misunderstood. I'm going to be attacked by people who don't understand the subtlety of any argument or discussion. But I think you need to hear me very clearly. Unless we, on the seaside of the aisle, get our act together, the other side is going to run all over us and come in with a ban that none of us are going to live with. We have to be the ones to say, we want to control the violence in this country. We want to ban drum magazines. We want to ban body armor for the individual. So the cops, for one, are not outgunned. I have officers of the law in my family. I'm concerned about the fact that they are often outgunned by gangbangers on the highways, for example. So let's be clear and let's stop being absolutists about this business. What I don't understand personally, and it's a shocking idea, when I was young in New York, a kid, I was on the rifle team, as I've told you. I'm very proud of it. I write about it with a picture, incidentally, in my new book, Train Tracks, which will be out shortly. I actually found the picture from my high school yearbook with little Michael on the rifle team. I didn't even know we were award-winning shooters. I had no idea. I really forgot it. I knew I was on the team, which I thought was odd. I used to love the smell of the gunpowder. But nobody ran through the hall shooting themselves or anyone else is the point. Okay, so yeah, I own guns and this and that. But in those days, if you had a handgun in New York City, you went to jail. There was a law called the Sullivan Law. How did it occur that there were so many guns on the streets of New York City? How did this happen? Where did this come from? So now the mayor and the police commissioner have a stop and frisk policy, which has cut down the murder rate, the violence in New York City by a large measure. And take a guess who's against it. The illegitimate left. The illegitimate, degenerate left is saying you can't stop and frisk people for guns. You hear this? This is the kind of insanity that the police have to face in this country. So anyway, let's get back to the point. Drum mags, body armor. I don't understand why anybody would argue we need that. Can anyone explain it to me? Let's begin in Ohio. Dave, you're first up on the Savage Nation. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I like to think I'm a pretty good conservative. I agree 100% on gun rights, and I agree with you. People don't need to own grenades, and they don't need to own magazines that can take out 100 people just as fast, if not faster. The protective gear, I'm not quite as sure on. The idea that, if someone can talk about in the presidency creating somewhere down the road a civilian brown shirt agency to help police certain areas in a different kind of way than any of us are used to, or the idea that, this world's going in a strange direction, and if there's ever a breakdown of civilization, that you can't protect yourself with some type of material that maybe a lot of others, maybe not so good others, have. I'm with you 100% on the drum magazines, but not on the protective gear.
Very interesting. You raise a very good point, and what you're remembering is Barack Obama's campaign speech from 2007, where he talked about creating the brown shirts that reported directly to him. I'm shocked that Romney has not found this ad and run with it, because it's a chilling ad. Play it, guys. Play that ad so that my audience can hear what Barack Obama really has in mind, perhaps for his second incarnation. We have that? No, don't we? See, that would have been nice timing if we had that. Okay, but these things happen. Give me a hint. I'll count to 10. I got to go brush my teeth, do my nails. 1-800-449-825. I mean, where do we limit the kind of firepower that we need? What do we need to buy? A used Huey helicopter with a Gatling gun on it to go hunting deer? Is that what you're going to argue next? The Huey is not as good as the Apache, therefore the government should sell you a Huey, and it should have the ability for you to fire rounds off a Gatling gun because you want to go hunt bison on Ted Turner's ranch? So here's your president, the man who's pretending to be a moderate before he was elected. Listen to this.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well-funded.
Where was this speech, and who's cheering in the background? Was that Acorn? Was that the Black Panthers? Who are they? The Nation of Islam? Who's cheering in the background? That's the most chilling speech Obama's ever given. It is widely disseminated on the Internet. It's been played over and over by everyone except those who should be playing it, mainly the Romney camp, who's still talking about jobs and national security. You know, they're always like several trains behind the engine here. There's several trains behind the engine. But all right, let's give him credit. At least he's starting to show signs of life. Can anyone argue why we need a drum magazine? I'd like to know why. Maybe I'll go buy body armor now. In fact, I'm starting to think I should sleep in body armor. The last caller was so convincing that I'm going to call up my gun dealer and ask him to get me full body armor. Maybe they can make full body armor pajamas so that I can sleep more peacefully at night, not fearing, a home invasion where I wouldn't be protected from a home invader. I think sleeping in body armor pajamas is a good idea. That's a good product, by the way. I think that's something that gun people should look into, making a new fortune. Get your body armor pajama for you and your wife. That would be terrific. I can't imagine the mechanics of that, but nevertheless, you get the picture. I mean, at a certain point, everything becomes absurd. Everything becomes absurd. But we're living in a crazy world. It's broken down. There's no question. There's no rhyme nor reason. You can lay the blame on... you can lay the blame at 1,000 feet, but it's not going to cure a thing. You can lay the blame at 1,000 feet. Not one single individual is responsible for where we are today. Many take advantage of it. There's no question. You saw the latest story on the shooter, right? The crazy guy, allegedly crazy guy who's acting crazy, making believe with the rolling eyes. Apparently, he sent a booklet, a whole write-up of what he was going to do. A whole write-up of what he was going to do, who he was going to attack. Movie massacre suspect sent chilling notebook to psychiatrist before attack. Okay? That was the headline from Fox News. Sent chilling notebook to psychiatrist before attack. James Holmes, the accused gunman in last Friday's midnight movie massacre in Colorado, mailed a notebook full of details about how he was going to kill people to a University of Colorado psychiatrist before the attack. But the parcel sat unopened in a mailroom for as long as a week before its discovery Monday, a law enforcement source told Fox News. Police and FBI agents were called to the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in Aurora on Monday morning after the psychiatrist, who was also a prophet at the school, reported receiving a package, blah, blah, blah. They didn't open it for a week? They couldn't open this package for a week? It was sitting in the mailroom? There's your universities at work. I don't know. Well, who are you going to blame now? You know what kind of lawsuit this is? Do you have any idea if you were a shyster lawyer? This is right out of Shakespeare. If you were a shyster ambulance chaser, or let's say on a lower scale, you're just Gloria Allred, an ordinary type of lawyer of that kind, somebody as ordinary as that, a scandal monger. Do you realize what kind of liability the university now has? They're suing the University of Pennsylvania, right, for the molestation. Could you imagine what kind of lawsuits are going to be laid at the foot of University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus? That university is going to be bankrupt. You don't have to be, a Clarence Darrow to win this one. But they didn't do the shooting, you'll say. No, they didn't. Absolutely, they didn't do the shooting. Nope. No, the University of Pennsylvania didn't do the raping of the boys either. And look what happened to them. They're in meltdown mode. That's the kind of sick law that we live in. in this country. That's kind of sick, the sick legal system that we have in this country, where any piece of garbage can sue anybody on invented fables. Any degenerate sicko can invent lawsuits and destroy somebody for no reason whatsoever. We all know that. We're going to do horror stories on the show eventually. The fact is that these people were killed with bullets. Are bullets the problem? No. Are guns the problem? No. But there are issues within the world of the Second Amendment that need to be addressed. One is the issue of drum magazines. The other is the issue of body armor. If you had a son or a son-in-law or a husband or a wife, for that matter, who was a police officer or a highway patrolman, would you want them to go out on the road every day knowing that some idiot could be driving around in full body armor with a fully loaded AR-15 or AK-47 with a drum magazine? Would you want that? Are you crazy to want that? How could you be a highway patrolman in a world like this? I don't see how those guys do the job anymore, given that we have such a breakdown in this society and such a large population of anti-American gangbangers running around with tattoos on their necks, who don't even speak English, who are ready to kill cops because that's part of the sick culture that they come from. I can predict as I sit here, and I'm no psychic, that because of Obama's amnesty for illegal aliens, we are going to see beheadings of police officers in this country, God forbid, within a very short period of time. The very same people who are doing it in Mexico will be doing it here. And it's not because of guns. It's because of his lax immigration policies. In fact, the opposite is true. It's not lax immigration policies. It's because of his open-door amnesty policies that we are seeing violence spilling across this country. So there's another problem. But it's not this problem at hand. Mayhem in Anaheim as protesters clash with police. Again, the undershirt, the tattoos on the neck, the defiance, because they come from countries where the police are hated and where there are no ramifications for going after the police. That's what your sons, that's what your husbands, maybe your wives have to deal with today in this country. We're not living in the America that you grew up in. We're living in a third world America in many border states. We're living in a third world America. If you live in California, you're living in a sort of pseudo first world. Some of us live in the first world, but most of us know we're living in the third world. The roads are broken. The violence is out of control in California. The police have the most horrendous job imaginable. And they're riding around with, what, a Glock, a 40 caliber Glock in their car and maybe a shotgun. And the gangbangers may have body armor and machine guns. No, I'm sorry, something's wrong with the whole picture. Something has to start with those of us on the right side of things, those of us with a C, capital C next to our name. We have to be the ones to direct this discussion, not the screeching gunophobes, not those who are afraid to own guns in New York City because they're afraid they'll use them on themselves or a family member. That's the primary motivation of the liberals who are afraid of guns. It's not gun violence. It's their own fears. I know this. It's a sort of schizophrenia. I have the gun. I'm liable to use it. I'm so depressed. I don't like myself. I'm liable to pull it and shoot my wife, myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want a gun around. I'm liable to use it. That's what they mean. If you're stable, you don't have those feelings. Or if you occasionally do, you can deal with them. If you're sane, but you're subject to all sorts of mind wandering. You know, what do they call it? Swimming-headedness? Darwin suffered from it. And if you have it, don't get a gun. That's all. But if you're a stable man or woman, you can have a gun in the house. You're never going to use it on yourself or anyone else in the family. Never. But if you're a liberal from New York who works for the ACLU, of course you shouldn't be able to own a gun. If you work for the New York Civil Liberties Union, or if you speak on MSNBC, you should be banned from owning a gun. By definition, you're afraid of killing yourself or hurting somebody, and I agree with you. You don't have the mental stability. If you write for The Nation, you shouldn't be able to own a gun because you can just look at them and see that they're on either lithium or some newer variety of psychoactive drug, and you can see the foam on the side of their mouths. They should not be able to own a gun. You could see the foam from the lithium on the corners of their mouth. They should not be able to own a gun. You could say anyone who eats sushi more than 3 times a week shouldn't own a gun for fear that they're unstable. I actually make anyone who has more than 3 frappuccinos a week, or anyone who can say the word macchiato without blinking an eye shouldn't own a gun, because it means that they're a super liberal. It's actually a funny riff I could do on stage. These people should not own guns. Anyone who could say macchiato without blinking shouldn't own a gun. Anyone, you get the joke? You want to do that for a few minutes? Who should not be able to own a gun? And do it in the comedic sense that I'm doing it in. Let's lighten it up a bit. Anyone who could say macchiato, I'd like a macchiato made with spring water, shouldn't own a gun. I want a soy frappuccino, shouldn't own a gun. Or just hang out in Starbucks for 10 minutes. You'll have 5 names for me for the shouldn't own a gun riff. Let's see, who else shouldn't own a gun? Anyone who drives a Prius? I'm not so sure, because I heard that it's true that 1 out of 1,000 owners who drive Prius, 1 out of 1,000 Prius owners are conservatives. Maybe 1 out of 10,000. Anyone who owns a Chevy Volt shouldn't own a gun. Let's see. Anyone who works for the Department of Homeland Security shouldn't own a gun off duty. I just made a lot of friends right there. Anyone who works for the TSA shouldn't own a gun off duty. They have enough power. No, I don't know if that syllogy works. Does that work? No, that's not a good one. The other one is good. The Frappuccino, Cappuccino, Rappuccino, soy. Why would anyone get a soy Frappuccino? I don't understand that part of it. Why are you going into a coffee shop to get a soy coffee drink? I don't get that part of it. Why not just get a coffee? What are you in there for? It's not good enough that they have a decaf? Now you need a soy Frappuccino made with spring water, with beans grown above 6,000 feet in Guatemala, that's sensitively grown? You should hear the stuff that people order over those bean bags. I give up on it. It's impossible to go into those places and come out without shaking your head. But nevertheless, you get the picture of those who should not own guns. It means they're unstable at any speed. The movies have wrecked. I think that the video games, the movies have overloaded our brains to violence. We don't even see it or feel it. If it hits us or a family member, yes. Otherwise, it's not real to us. That movie massacre to most Americans is probably not any more real to us than it is to the psychopath who allegedly did this, nor to what he's allegedly feeling. He's saying to the guards now, how did the movie end? Now, that's if he's really having a detachment of that level, unless he's faking it. Let's assume he's crazy. Let us assume he's crazy. Who else would do this but a crazy person? On the face of it. He should get the death penalty, crazy or not. That's something I would argue to the last day on radio. I don't care whether he's crazy. That's what the death penalty was invented for, designed for. There's no excuse for this. You kill him. Get him off the planet. Eliminate his DNA from the planet. Let's not coddle him in jail for 30 years. What kind of nonsense is this? Insanity defense. Who came up with that one? By definition, anyone who does a thing like this is insane. So, any one of those childish phrases applies here. And so what? That he's crazy. He still did the crime. He did the crime, now let him do the time, which is life. The life of death. Kill him. Give him one appeal and get rid of the guy. Get him off the planet. Don't tell me about a childhood trauma or that he went to a movie. I don't want to hear it. The only justice here would be execution for this man, and the faster the better. So, I mean, this is how most Americans feel. I'll be right back.
Savage.